Ms. Riley, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hamer,
Here.
Mr. Lowry,
Here.
Mr. Rupel,
Here.
Mr. Scholes, Mr. Smolik,
Here.
Mr. Ziegler,
Here.
Mr. Fenstermaker,
Here.
Thank you. It looks like we have administration of an oath for a new police officer this evening. So Chief McAllister, do you want to take over?
So, John, if you want to come up, please. I want to introduce everybody, John Sluga. He's one of our applicants for the lateral police officer position that we posted in February. He'll actually be replacing Joe Megacy that retired from the police department. John was a standout candidate, and it quickly became apparent that he should be considered for the position. He's a Minner on the Lake resident, and he's here tonight with his wife, Megan, and his two daughters, Brooklyn and Addison. John is coming to us from the Stark County Sheriff's Office, where he served as a school resource officer and a deputy on patrol. Prior to his service with Stark County, John also spent time as an Ohio State trooper and a federal law enforcement officer working for the National Security Agency. He's a graduate of Lake Catholic and also served honorably in the United States Coast Guard. We want to thank him for his service, and on behalf of the city and police department, we're proud to have you as our newest addition to the department, and we look forward to many years of professional and dedicated service.
Chief. Okay, thank you. Mr. Slogan, you can hold the Bible. John Sluga, raise your right hand, please. Repeat after me. I, John Sluga,
I, John Sluga,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
the Charter,
the Charter,
the ordinances and resolutions
the ordinances and resolutions
of the City of Kirtland,
of the City of Kirtland,
and that I will faithfully,
and I will faithfully,
honestly,
honestly,
and impartially
and impartially
discharge my duties as police officer
discharge my duties as police officer
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Just want to present John our Kirtland Police Department Challenge Coin, and also a certificate of appointment that also contains a mission, vision, and core values of the Kirtland Police Department. John, welcome aboard.
Thank you, sir.
See you. There you go.
Teresa, want to close us?
All right, we're up to reading and approval of the minutes of the June 20th, 2022 Finance Committee meeting.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Comments? Hearing none, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hamer,
Yes.
Mr. Lowry,
Yes.
Mr. Rupel,
Abstain?
Mr. Scholes,
Yes.
Mr. Smolik,
Yes.
Mr. Ziegler,
Yes.
Mr. Fenstermaker,
Yes.
Thank you. Moving along to the minutes of the June 20th, 2022 council meeting.
Motion to adopt.
Motion by Councilman Smolik, second by Councilman Lowry. Are there any comments? Hearing none, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hamer,
Yes.
Mr. Lowry,
Yes.
Mr. Rupel,
Abstain?
Mr. Scholes,
Yes.
Mr. Smolik,
Yes.
Mr. Ziegler,
Yes.
Mr. Fenstermaker,
Yes.
All right, thank you. Chief Hutton?
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple things to report. It seems like every month I talk about how busy we are, and we seem to surpass each month's total. Last month in June, we responded to 125 calls total and 59 EMS transports, which is quite a few for us. I'm sure you're all aware we had a structure fire on Rocking Horse last week. Unfortunately, that fire had a very good head start on us when we arrived. Fire was already up in the attic when we arrived on scene. It was a good use of our automatic aid and MABUS system in Lake County. Everybody worked very well together. There was nobody home at the time of the fire, so no civilian injuries. We did have one minor firefighter injury from another department. And I just want to thank all the departments and the other chiefs that helped out. All of our full-time firefighters and several of our part-time firefighters completed the mass casualty active threat training that we did at Lakeland Community College. That was a couple weeks ago. It was great training. It allowed fire department and law enforcement to interact and train together, not just Kirtland, but agencies from all throughout Lake County were able to work together. Great drill. Everyone's on the same page at this point. In closing, Wonderstruck is this weekend at Lakeland Community College. They're expecting 6,000 to 7,000 people each day. There will probably be some traffic issues. We will have fire EMS personnel up there all weekend. University Hospital will be providing a medical trailer with staff that will give us support. It's basically a mobile emergency room that they'll be bringing. And I'm sure Chief McAllister will talk about what police are doing up there. Other than that, I'm open for any questions.
Any questions for Chief? I know you indicated you have something to get to right away, so go. Oh, you are good now? Okay.
Cause of the fire, chief, did they figure that out at all?
Fire looks to be accidental. We're still looking at the actual cause, but we have a pretty good idea. We've turned it over to the insurance companies, and we're going to let them work it out between them.
Thank you, chief.
Anything else?
Chief, how about the activity for the 4th? Did we have a lot of injuries at all in the city or anybody injured?
4th of July, for the fire department standpoint, was very quiet. I think the rain on Friday night helped us over the weekend. We had very few calls, even in the surrounding area. Didn't hear very many calls. Chief can probably tell you about the police call-outs. I know there were quite a few fireworks complaints, but no incidents from our end.
Thanks, Chief.
Else? All right, thank you, Chief Hutton. Chief McAllister?
Thank you, Council President Rubel. July 4th, we did respond to multiple noise disturbances based on the fireworks. A lot of them we were unable to locate just due to the nature that it was done when we got into the area. We spoke to a couple of residents and advised them of the ordinance, and we didn't end up having to take any enforcement action in terms of issuing citations or anything. Echoing a lot of what Chief Hutton said, the drill was excellent. All of our officers walked away with a new understanding, especially how to help EMS in these situations and pairing up to clear the school after the incident's already taken place. And then the Wonderstruck, we are working with the people putting on the event. They have private security, plus we're running police on scene during the event. We have multiple police officers from several different agencies all scheduled to be there just to assist with security, to help EMS in the event that they have to do any crowd clearance for people that may pass out or have heat exhaustion or something of that nature, which tends to happen at these events. But other than that, I think that would conclude my report, and I'm open to any questions.
Any questions for Chief?
Chief, I'm sorry, Chief, that maybe to both of you, what exactly was the drill at Lakeland? What did you guys practice over there?
So a lot of it was based on like casualty collection after the incident occurs. So getting into the scene, evaluating what's going on, and then putting together an evacuation team. So the officers are funneling people in that are responding from other agencies. They're collaborating, working to get teams together of police and EMS. That way they can do extractions, treat wounded people on scene, and then make evaluations about either getting people out or getting people lifted and outside where they can get a better and critical treatment.
Thank you. Triaging, that kind of stuff, all that, okay.
Do you have any more questions for Chief McAllister? Mr. Fernaro?
Good evening, everyone. I'll be brief since we have a lot on the agenda. The blue tractor made another round of roadside mowing. To date, the department has done 10 ditch enclosures. We have another 5 already on the books, so we're pretty much done. We set that number between 10 and 15 when we brought it back. So it'll probably be wrapped up for ditch enclosures for the year. We also have done over 1,000 feet of ditching this year so far. And we'll start coming up here, and we did a little road patching already. Within the next couple of weeks, we'll do some more road patches, and crack seal will start in about a month. That completes my report.
Mr. Fernard, I'd like you to put me on that bottom of that list and hopefully still get mine.
Yeah, you've been on the list for a little bit.
How many ditch enclosures did we do?
We have 10 completed, and we already have 5 that Doug already approved. We're waiting on the residents to get their material.
Thank you, Mr. Pernaro.
Mr. Fenaro, is the patching on Monterey completed?
For right now, we did what we could up there. There's a little more to do, so we'll get some more done.
Thank you.
One more thing. Are we still sharing mechanic with the school, or has that been resolved?
I believe the school hired a mechanic, so I think that's good to end. I think it ended in July.
July 1st.
Anything else? Thank you. Mr. Courtney?
Thank you. Brief report. As I mentioned in the service committee meeting, 3 bids were received on the 21st for the streets. They were a little high. We're recommending a pared down version of the contract, but it still gets the bulk of the work done for us. Old Town sewer improvements. Oh, and there's legislation on the agenda tonight that we're looking for just first reading on that tonight. Old Town sewer improvements. We met with the Department of Utilities on June 22nd, discussed final submittals and a public hearing date. Final assessment list is due to the county Thursday of this week. Sorry, Friday this week. And it looks like the public hearing based on that schedule is going to be second or third week of September. I will let you know if anything changes. And we have the closeout legislation on the agenda tonight for 2020 street rehabilitation, which was Emerald Glen, and the 2019 Booth Road paving project. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
Just one. Town. And of what the revised tie-in will be for the residents? Will we be able to share that pretty soon?
Go ahead.
The money contributed by the county will go straight to the bottom line of the construction costs. So what it'll do is it'll reduce their assessment. And if memory serves, it was somewhere around $8,000 reduction in the assessment. $7,500.
So the estimated tie-in cost, that's still going to be, is it 7?
The tap-in fee to the county was 5,600, 5,700, and then the costs for abandoning your septic and tying in is probably around 5,000.
Thank you.
Do you know when the Old Town meeting is going to happen? Isn't it scheduled?
Public hearing, second or third week of September as of right now.
Mr. Courtney, relative to construction inflation, how has that estimate moved? The overall construction estimate moved?
For Old Town?
Yes, sir.
I have not reevaluated the estimate yet. I'm waiting until the final transmittal of the final plans, estimates, and so forth. I don't want to do the estimate now and then have to do it again, so I'm waiting until the last moment. But I suspect we're probably going to see maybe a 8 to 12% jump from when I last did it.
That estimate was 3.62 million. Is that roughly?
Yeah, it was, that sounds about right. Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Fernaro?
To jump back in, sorry about that. I need to thank Mr. Lowry, Mr. Sams, Mr. Bloom for spending a whole day a couple Fridays ago with 150 youth kids painting our salt building. And it was pretty hot that day, but I appreciate all the hard work and all the help. The building looks great, and the kids did a great job.
Did Rich get more paint on himself than on the building?
I didn't do anything.
All right, thank you. Up to Mr. Lalo.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. So it was a fairly busy last few weeks. I've fielded a number of phone calls with residents regarding nuisance, dogs, zoning violations, grass violations, snow plowing questions. We've gone through, as you can see on the agenda, it's going to be, was it 22-039 through 41, addresses section 1068 of our ordinance relating to the Kirtland Recreation Park, which is located behind the schools. One of the things we noticed early on is that if you look at those ordinances, it references the like a park and recreation commission that, to the best of my knowledge, I've never seen one. No one meets, there's nothing there. And I know Mr. Fernaro, as the Director of Public Service, has really taken the reins and taking control of the responsibility of the maintenance of the park. So what I did within these ordinances was I addressed the term as a park operator. So it still keeps the possibility open of a Parks and Rec commission. If there is one, then that commission is in charge of the park. If not, it goes to the Director of Public Service. And then I just designated the points of ingress, egress, or entrance and exit of the park. At this time, within those three different ordinances, it designated that the only entrance is through the school's property. However, there is another entrance off of a private drive in Russellhurst, and the city has a valid easement from that. That's been transferred from Ms. King to Mr. Masick to, I think, from Mr. Masick to the city at that point, or maybe one other person. But that easement has traveled through all of that, and the city does have the right for ingress, egress to the park on that. So within these ordinances, it does also allow people to traverse that private drive, either via pedestrians, bicycles, or underspeed vehicles, which would be golf carts. I know oftentimes you see some golf carts. That's a private drive. They're allowed to be on that private drive. We don't have any control or jurisdiction over golf carts on a private drive, but them on the park, we do. So I think it just kind of cleans that up a little bit. So we have those three ordinances out there. I asked that go at least a second reading just to make sure everyone's fully aware of that. You also have yes, sir. That is correct. That is correct. You also have the ordinances. We did put the road bid on there, okay, for the 2022 road project. I think they mentioned that we're going to ask that go at least second reading as well, because there needs to be an adjustment to the appropriations to accommodate and get as much bang for the buck as the city can as it relates to that. But they first need to get the modification of the appropriations on the agenda. Lastly, there were the road material bids for pickup and delivery of limestone and asphalt concrete road materials. That can wait as well. That does not need to go today, but that's all on the agenda for today as new business. I also just want to update council as well. I do plan on meeting with Chief McAllister in the coming weeks. Hopefully we will have a modification of our ordinance addressing the discharge of firearms in the city to properly coincide, or to fully coincide with another state ordinance that addresses discharge of firearms. So we're going to work on that, try to make sure that there's no excessive restrictions on a person's right to keep and bear arms and to discharge firearms. So we're going to work through that, and hopefully maybe by the end of, by the time we come back from summer recess, we'll have something on the books for you there. Lastly, at the next meeting next week, I would like, if council is amenable to this, to place on the agenda the resolution from council pledging to allocate the funds received as a result of an income tax increase to devote that to road fund, to the road program, right? So I have something drafted, and I just wanted to make sure that council is on board with it. So I again, I figure I'd go through it a little bit with you today for transparency's sake, and just to make sure there's any input. If there's anything that you want added in there, we can add it, right? But I spoke with Lewis. What we are going to do, or what the city will do if this charter amendment passes, is Lewis will create a separate line item within the general fund to place those extra funds in that line item, so that the residents can see where those funds, that we have those funds, and then they can see that those funds are being paid towards the road program, right? So, so the way I have it written, if you could just try to listen, should the residents pass an amendment to increase the municipal income tax, and this council hereby declares and pledges to allocate all funds received as a result of said increase towards the city's road program. The city will direct the finance director to create a separate line item within the general fund whereby all monies received as a result of the increase in municipal income tax can be identified and tracked to show the residents the specific sum received and how that money will be appropriated. I wasn't sure if there's anything else you wanted to add or to specify in there. But because the way I put it is, to allocate all funds received as a result of said increase towards the city's road program. I don't know if you want to say anything different or elaborate on that, but I figure I'd leave it up to council because this will be presented at council as a whole.
What
Can you
about
read the
drainage?
first part? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I was going to ask you, read the first part again.
Sure. Should the residents of the city of Kirtland pass an amendment to its charter and permit the city to increase municipal income tax from 2 to 2.25%, then this council hereby declares and pledges to allocate and appropriate you want to, so I can say, I said to allocate and appropriate all funds received as a result of said increase to the roads, the city's road program. So if you want me to say all funds received as a result of from that 0.25%, I could do that as well. But I just said as a result of the increase towards the road program. Correct.
I guess,
My question is, what about the drainage? Should that be included or excluded from this?
I think drainage specific to a road project, I think there needs to be some latitude in there for that. I mean, so if we were going to do curtain drains, or say Fox Hill would have gone this year, right? And stormwater funds weren't available. Well, to get that project done correctly, you've got to address the drainage.
My concern would be, are we going to tie our hands if we just put the road program and don't include something about the word drainage? Maybe it's a matter of words, but it does make me concerned.
No, I agree. I mean, if it's requirement to make sure when we do the rehab on the road, drainage is part of it, and those funds are going towards that, then I think we need to put something in there that drainage work specific to the road repair would be included in that allocation.
So maybe to the city's road program and associated drainage projects?
Associated
Directly.
essential drainage projects that pertain to the road that's being fixed.
But maybe so you don't muddy it up, in our road programs and what we've talked about, drainage is always part of our rehab. So maybe it's more explanation in our road program. If we're rehabbing a road, it's because of a drainage issue. So we're addressing that in our rehab streets.
Then we probably don't need to muddy it up and make it more convoluted than it is.
I guess I would like to just add that it's not to include capital equipment as well. That's a separate budget.
So, any specific capital equipment, Matt?
So allocate and appropriate all funds received as a result of said increase towards the city's road program and shall not include any appropriations for capital equipment. Sound good or?
Yeah, no, well, obviously we can look at a draft before Monday.
Absolutely. And we can amend it at the table as well if need be, but.
And we could pass it on Monday if we want to or need to as well.
Correct.
The only last comment I want to make on that is when we talk about the road plan from 10 years from now and the increase that we potentially could be getting from income every year over year, there's a slight potential it could happen that we could have a surplus. And if that surplus happens, we might not be all sitting up here in 10 years. Do we not want council to look back and see if an adjustment on the income tax should be made or if there's a different use of the allocation of the funds? We just let it go, then we could have a surplus. It's a slim chance,
Mr. Fenster,
but it's there.
Mr. Fensterman.
If I can add, I mean, this is essentially a pledge on behalf of each member of council who votes for it, who votes for it to only appropriate or approve the appropriation of funds for the road program as a result of this income tax. That's not to say someone else might come in, they're not bound by it. Nobody's bound by this legally except all of your constituents can come to you and say, hey, listen, you know, Mr. Rupel, you said you would only do this, right? And now you're changing your tune on it. They can't, you know.
I'm not a flip flopper for the record.
For example, somebody could do that. Yes. So, but that, this,
Per Mr. Fenstermaker's request, so if anybody's not following the legislation, basically if this passes in November, basically this just, you'll be able to come in as residents, go, okay, what did that 0.25%, what did that total to this year? Was it $820,000? And we'll be able to show where that money is and where it went to the direct road programs. What Mr. Fenstermaker is asking is that basically if we do get this road program through, you're pretty much going to go through all this money through 15, 20 years the way it's based right now. But, you know, it can increase from year to year. That 820 could turn into $1 million in 10 years from now. To that point, can we do a annual meeting or a meeting every 5 years or require, you know, separate from the legislation that you can, you know, look at and assess where we're at? And, you know, if we did, you know, $17 million worth of roads, okay, we've taken in $14 million, you know, at year 13. Or if for some reason we've gotten big businesses right here and we got a lot more stuff and we're taking, you know, $1.5 million and we've caught up to or paid for, you know, all our road loans and the interest in it. How do we go? Do we have a meeting where we can sit there and go, okay, we can adjust this down? You know, or
Mr.
say,
Smollett?
hey, because we do have the, we're always going to have road maintenance to do. Basically, once we get through with the roads, you know, say in 10 years, you're going to have $800,000 to $1 million a year that you need to put towards road maintenance, whether it's crack sealing, fixing a road here and there. But it's not going to be to the extent we have right now, you know, 2, 3, 4 million that we're going to try spending annually for 3, 4 years to get caught up. How do we
Mr.
kind of
Smollett?
address that in 10 years or 15 years if we do start taking in more money, Matt?
Councilman Smollett? I think, so I would just remind everyone that every year we're all looking at the budget, right? And how much is coming in. We're obviously going to have a separate fund category for this, know exactly how much is coming in. Like Mr. Fenstermaker said, like you said, we're talking 15, 20 years from now based on what we know this is going to bring in today. Now, to your point, Ron, wouldn't that be a great problem to have, right? So what I would
Hopefully
say,
none of us are here in 15 to 20 years, because that might not be.
at a minimum, council always has the ability to raise the income tax credit factor, raise, not lower, right? So to make it, if you raise that income tax credit factor, it's a tax break for those that live in Kirtland and work elsewhere, right? So that's one mechanism that you could reduce it some.
the other way it could be done is the way we have this proposed charter amendment. Here, let me take a step back. The current charter dictates that the maximum tax rate that the city can charge somebody for income tax is 2%, okay? But it also mandates that council shall pass a resolution ordering the collection of 2% income tax. What we're doing with this proposed charter amendment is stating that that the city cannot exceed 2.25% income tax, okay? But it's not mandating the city collect 2.25%. It's mandating the city collect between 2 and 2.25%. So the limit, the maximum is 2.25%. Okay. So now let's say we come, 10 years from now, council says we have all this extra money, surplus, everything else. We're sitting pretty. Council can now has the authority built into that charter amendment to reduce the income tax from 2.25% to 2. Okay. So that's another way that this proposed charter amendment gives council a little bit of that flexibility to scale back if needed.
Good point. You just can't take it beyond the 2.25. Right. That's a
And you can't take it below 2.
Gotcha.
Anything else for Mr. Lello?
That's it for my report. If you have other questions for me, I'll be more than happy to answer them. I will have that resolution ready to go for Monday's meeting.
Did you wish to go into executive session after the meeting?
If we can, to discuss the threat of imminent litigation, it shouldn't take long. Thank you.
Is that today or Monday?
Executive session? It could be today. Like I said, it'll take 5 minutes.
Thank you. Anything else?
I got one question for Mr. Lallo, and this could also go to the mayor as well. Around the budget times, we talked about getting our updated ordinances online and everything updated. Has there been any headway in securing that?
So what we're doing, planning and zoning is going through all of its zoning ordinances right now. We have these ordinances that we're working through. There's a number of other ordinances that I plan on pushing through as well, not pushing through, presenting, but modifying and adjusting for the end of the year so that we can have that updated online. But yes, correct. So I think it costs like between 5,000 and 7,000. Yeah, at least to update it each time. So
No, it'll go up the more we have.
yes, sir.
Per that, when we update that, Denise would know because she's been here the longest. Has that always been American Legal then's always handled that for us? Is that American Legal, right, who does our ordinances?
Since I've been clerk, yes. I believe there was a different company years ago, but it's been American Legal for quite some time.
Thank you, Denise.
And don't forget, as council people, if you yourself are looking for a specific ordinance that's passed since the last update, you just do an email search in your search box, related to that ordinance. And it should come up. If a resident has a question similarly, obviously Denise and Matt can always help as well, Mr. Lallo. Denise, when did we start doing the packets via email? About 3 years ago or 4 years ago?
I think it's just been maybe 2 to 3 years.
Okay. So anything from that point forward, you should be able to find.
They're all on the website probably for the last couple of years. They're all on the website. If you're looking for a signed executed copy, then you would have to request that from me. We don't put the signatures on the website.
True. And otherwise, the language is there.
Yes.
Good point. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, up to you.
Yes, thank you, Council President Rupel. As the chief stated before, Chief Hutton talked about the fire in Rocking Horse. You cannot imagine the devastation the family has to go through when something like that happens. So, I speak for everybody here tonight, that our hearts go out to that entire family, into the neighborhood, because that's a tough thing for a neighborhood to endure and have to go through. But I know that to be a great neighborhood, and I know that they will, certainly they've already come to the aid of the family. So, thanks to all of the first responders, by the time I got there, certainly they didn't need me, but, our police and fire responded so quickly, and all of those other agencies, I think, Chief Hutton still there? Was there 8 total? 8 or 9 other municipalities, and it just phenomenal to watch, and the coordination amongst each one of these departments, really was impressive. And so thanks to those people willing to go into those buildings and try to assist. So anyhow, yeah, start off with a bit of a dour subject. LDS, thanks to the LDS, as Mr. Finaro mentioned, I invite you guys all to go up and take a look at the salt barn. To have 150 volunteers up there, again, with Mr. Lowry, Mr. Finaro, Mr. Sams, and Mr. Bloom's help. I mean, the barn looks brand new, so I invite you guys to go up and take a look. So thanks to them. As somebody mentioned, I think it was you, Councilman Fenstermaker, the big win, I would call it, for the residents of Old Town. I want to thank Commissioner Plechnik for his work. Back in March, I had asked him I invited him here to City Hall, and in that meeting, kind of pled with him, I'll say, to help somehow, some way find some funding for the residents of Old Town. And, boy, oh boy, he committed that he would look and see, and he did, and the commissioners. So thanks to all the commissioners. And interestingly enough, former Mayor Tyler was there for his first meeting from his special appointment to fill out that unexpired term. And he had a chance to vote to assist the residents of Old Town. So $1 million, and like Doug said and Joe said, we're talking about 75, when you take $1 million divided by 132, it comes out around $7,500 of relief to the folks over there. In addition to that, they've also committed $250,000 in CDBG funding to the residents of Old Town that meet a certain income threshold. So those dollars will go to the question you'd asked, Mr. Fenstermaker, about the connection fees and septic abandonment, those kinds of things. So that'll be up to the commissioners how they ultimately dole that money out and who's eligible. But that's another really big deal. And we have some other irons in the fire as well related to grant funding. We're not going to stop, like I said at the commissioners meeting, and I went there to thank them as they passed it, and had a chance to have a couple of residents there with me, and as well as the councilman for that ward, Mr. Lowry, was there when they passed it. But we're not going to stop looking for money to assist, because it's still a pretty significant financial burden for them, but this takes a good chunk out of it. So special thanks to all those that help with that, and Doug's assistance and Joe's assistance and Mr. Roethlisberger from Lake County Utilities assistance to get all the data needed to present to the commissioners. So on the 27th of June, we had a great concert out front. We had a big band, the Dan Zola band or orchestra, and a lot of fun. We had city night that night. So thanks to Chief Hutton, thanks to Mr. Finaro, Mr. Smolik for coming out there and cooking. And several of our firemen came there too to give a hand to cook burgers and hot dogs. Had drinks on hand for the folks up there. We're going to do another city night on just next week, July 13th. And so I would ask if there's anybody available to assist that night. Come up there, help set up, help cook, bring a bag of ice, whatever. Certainly would be appreciated. Oh, Mr. Hamer was up there too. That's the 13th of July. And then on the 20th and 27th again, we'll have two more concerts, the third and fourth final concerts of the summer with the Friends of the Library. So keep all of that in mind, and Teresa does a good job of keeping our Facebook posts up and relevant. So in regard to 22-0-33, we are looking that would pass tonight. Like our law director said, he's working that concurrent resolution, so to speak, and he wanted your input tonight. And I think he got that input as to kind of how to finesse that. So that'll be on next Monday's agenda, which is only 6 days from now. Monday's agenda, and again, that commits those dollars, newly raised dollars from the hopeful passage of the charter amendment this fall to roads specifically. Like Mr. Schultz said, not capital. You guys talked about the limestone and asphalt. Next week, we'll see the appropriation. I don't think we talked about this yet. The finance director is actually working to dial in all the numbers related to an amending the appropriation. That amended appropriation will reflect several items, two key items being, one is a police car. We found out just a week or two ago that police cars are now 2.5 years out. So in anticipation, in light of the recent reporting by our finance director related to our city income taxes being ahead this year, we felt that this would be an appropriate measure to take now so we can start our reduced fleet rotation, right? So I think we're taking it from 8 to 6 guys, 8 to 6 cars. And so that, 2.5 years is a long way away, and we've got some cars that will be pretty aged at that point. So this gets a good jump start on that. And so I think that's obviously a pertinent use for this money. We talk about road maintenance all the time in here, and so as part of support of our road program. So I've also asked the finance director, as part of his budget amendment, to be presented to council, the appropriation next week. I've asked the finance director to expand that budget somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000. Now, not all of that is going to come from the general fund. There's some other pieces, we talk about the sale of the roller that can only go back into the road levy fund 205. We talk about the closeouts of these contracts for another 70,000 or so. So when you see that final language for the amended appropriation for Monday, which actually will come out tomorrow, it will delineate where those funds, where that new $250,000 expansion comes from. And why I say that's important, I think, again, you guys saw a little bit of Joe and Doug's presentation. Moving forward is just to pave roads. Yeah, that's great. And we're going to do a lot of that this year. If we don't maintain our roads and we don't, number one, markings, painting lines on our roads is pretty important for safety. To maintain it, keep our good roads good, that's part of this $250,000. And then also, there will be partial depth repairs for Kirtland Chardon. If anybody's been on Kirtland Chardon lately, Mr. Hamer probably goes up and down that road once or twice a day. But, Kirtland Chardon has taken a good beating over these last couple winters. And so really could use some partial depth repairs up there. And I know that Doug and Joe and I have talked over the last few months about looking for some alternative funding for Kirtland Chardon specifically, teaming up with the parks and, the Metro Parks and Holden and those things in terms of grant funding. But in the meantime, and without knowing that we're going to get that money, we do need to do something to shore up the worst of the worst parts of that road. So that's another piece. And then, we have to prepare ourselves for the potholes that just appear in our neighborhoods. And then not only during the summer and the fall, but also in the winter. So that'll be a piece of that. The patching piece will be in there too. And we'll be, the service department will be doing not just pothole repairs here and there throughout the city for the rest of this summer and fall, but there will be several sections of where they'll bring in the grinder and, do some partial depth repairs themselves in some of the neighborhoods. Did I miss anything, Joe or Doug? Okay. So you'll see that, and I'll appreciate any consideration for that on Monday night. And I think that's it. Any questions?
I guess I just have a quick question, because seeing the gentleman in the back here reminded me, are there any partial depth repairs planned on Hobart?
What gentleman? Oh, that gentleman. Joseph. Beyond just patching some potholes?
We'll probably handle those. Hobart was on there for maintenance this year.
Majority issues on Hobart seem to be shoulder issues too in particular, correct?
You're correct. It's running on the edge of it.
And should we, should in the fall, I think that'll be one of the roads if this new adjustment to the charter income tax does pass, I think, that has to be a road for serious consideration for next year. That's just such a highly traveled road.
Mr. Fenauer, Mr. Courtney, spurred my memory regarding Hobart. Are there any culverts that are load restricted there? I had somebody that I used to work with reminded me that there's a couple wooden culverts there. Might be something you want to take a look at. Just mentioned that there's a lot of, in his opinion, he's a professional engineer, oversized vehicles, and I said I would talk to you regarding possibly getting, I think the county has portable scales. It was something that we policed at least 10 years ago on Markel when we had a lot of oversized vehicles traveling through city street grid.
Yeah, definitely look into it.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mayor Potter, just want to share this thought. There's an awful lot of thank yous going on around here, and you thank everybody for a lot of things. And I just want to echo back to you and certainly your administrative team for the work you did to obtain this $1 million grant. It's not something that just happens overnight, and $1 million is not a drop in a bucket. So your due diligence and certainly, I guess, all your behind the scene work and networking with teams and other community leaders makes a huge difference. So you should be proud of that. And thanks a lot.
Well said, Councilman. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich.
Anything else for the mayor? I don't believe there's any standing committee reports. We had the committee meeting for for the service department. before
Correct,
that.
President Roble. Yeah, we had the service committee meeting to go over the roads that were just bid on. I want to thank Mr. Cordy and Mr. Fernaro for the good presentation and kind of updating council on everything that's going to be done, and for the mayor actually putting a little bit extra money in against upward to get a few more things done this year. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. I don't have any new correspondence.
I just wanted to ask, Mr. Hamer, is there going to be a standing committee meeting on any more discussion on the internet?
Oh, not at this time that I'm aware of.
All right, thanks.
Up to public comments on matters not on the agenda. This is an opportunity for members of the public here to come forward. If you do, I just ask that you please state your name and address. And now it's the time if you have any public comments on matters not on the agenda. Please come up to the microphones.
We've recommended an award of a contract. Council still has to act on that. No, it'll be what we planned. He indicated in his bid that he could start in late July, but it's probably going to be early August by the time the contract's awarded and we're able to have a pre-con. Council still has to award the contract, so.
What I can say, sir, is that in order to properly, let's say, seal the deal with that bid, the city needs to first amend its appropriations, and that is going to be on the next agenda. And then with that amendment of the appropriations, we also have one of the pieces of legislation today for the awarding of that bid. So the hope is that council can adjudicate this or address this at next Monday's meeting. Yes, sir.
We just need your address, I'm sorry, for the record,
Your house number.
your house number.
We need your house number for your address. You just gave your street. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Zanya and Doug or Joe could correct me on it. Right now, we have Prelog, Shadowbrook, Ding, 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 along with Laredo, Ridge, Locust, and was that it for the roads? Or
That's it.
that was it for the roads that, along with what they were discussing before with maintenance on it, whether it's crack sealing, patching, that kind of stuff also.
All
No
paving.
car and ship.
Paving.
All paving.
In the amending the appropriation, without having all the numbers in front of me, is for the expansion of the maintenance piece, not necessarily the awarding of the contract, right? Because I think the contract is what, 1.312, Doug? 1.312, right? And so we've appropriated already 1.35, I believe, 1,350,000. So we're actually within that threshold, but for the sake of, I think, making sure that we're willing to invest in that maintenance piece, passing that ordinance on Monday night prior to awarding the contract, I think just makes sense.
Thank you. Any other public comment that matters not on the agenda? All right, moving on to old business. Public comments on agenda items of old business. Another opportunity for the public to come forward. If there's anything regarding old business. Seeing no movement, Ordinance number 22-0-33. This is a third reading, an ordinance providing for the submission to the electorate of the city of Kirtland, Ohio, a proposal to amend the charter of said city by amending Article 6, Taxation, Section 1, Prohibition of Excessive Income Tax, and declaring an emergency. Third reading, we need a motion.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Ziegler, second by Councilman Lowry.
Motion to declare an emergency and adopt.
Second.
All right, motion by Councilman Ziegler, second by Councilman Lowry. First of all, is there any discussion?
After the holding of 3 different community forums addressing this issue, this council, in addition to the mayor and director of finance, have determined that the best method to achieve appropriate, consistent funding for the city's road program is to levy an income tax beyond the restriction placed on the city by Article 6, Section 1 of its own charter. Perhaps dress it up, or you just keep it as is.
I think that's like forms the foundation for the rationale, like the reason for increasing the income tax. I'm not sure.
Just trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Oh,
but
I'm
that's
sorry.
fine.
I'm
No,
sorry.
that's fine. I just wanted to point that out, that was our kind of covered. The Section 1 is, this is what they'll see on the ballot, right? This language is what our constituents will see on the ballot.
That is correct.
I think it's important to note, the law director did state that it's a maximum of 2.25%. So it wouldn't take a charter amendment to dial it back. It's just a vote of council at that time.
That's exactly right. It would be amending our ordinance, because we have a separate ordinance for levying municipal income tax. It would be amending that ordinance from 2.25 to whatever number below that you would want.
Whatever's necessary, yeah. Okay.
Correct.
We had a work session prior to, and we did receive some bids that were significantly higher than the engineer's estimate, and I think everybody knows what price hikes have been to their pocket, but, in the construction world, they've been quite excessive as well. I really hope that Mr. Courtney and Mr. Fenaro, if we can see this updated road plan, with some projections that give us a degree of comfortability that the 0.25 is the number. I mean, whenever you go out too far, the bands of error can get pretty large. So, there's some projections here, but we obviously know that we're behind the 8 ball relative to the dollars I think that we're going to need. And then you would also gave a brief presentation regarding some PCR or PCI update type of technology from a PMG evaluation. How quickly would, if you guys moved on that, would that be able to be publicized for us and for council and for our constituents to be able to start to build, what, this is the old worksheet I found from back in the day when we worked on the road levy, 3 unsuccessful times. But, we're going to need to really have, I don't want to use that word, saying, we're just going to have our ducks in a row relative to everything we want and display it to the people in a very warm fashion so they know exactly what they're paying for.
Councilman Schultz, I would ask you the question, to your point, just about getting a jump on with PMG. We have to wait till next year as it stands because it's not part of our budget. If you'd like, I can reach out to Mr. Slapnicker and ask him to amend add another $10,000 so we can go ahead and move on that so we're in better position for next year. We just didn't want to put all of that on council right now, but council thinks it's a good idea with what you saw earlier, the pavement conditions report and the video footage and all of that stuff. Again, helps prepare for next paving season.
Yeah, our thinking was to budget that for next year, use the 10-mile pilot program that we have to move forward to show exactly what we have on those 10 miles of road, break down our rehab and our maintenance items so our residents can actually see what's going on. When we had that meeting in here a little while back, I showed some of the bridle light first people Fox Hill, and they realized, okay, our road's not that bad.
So the pilot that you showed incorporates the next several years of what is in the road plan. So you feel that that covers us, right?
For now, till we
Yeah.
could budget for the whole program.
Okay, all right, fantastic. Because the price of that was, you said 27.5. I didn't know if it was 27,500, $2,750. I didn't know.
It was $2,750.
So I guess just a show of hands, who would think they'd like to move forward with what you saw with the PMG?
I'm not going to show a hand, I think, but I'll tell you, I think we should move forward with that. It hasn't been done since 2018. Our roads are still behind the 8 ball. I think it's a smart move from the city standpoint. So I think it's awesome what you guys did. And the video side of it versus how it's been done in the past, while, driving and just using notepads. I think the visual will help residents also when you start putting the plan together and you get the PCR ratings of the roads. So I would, early spring next year, or, when we're talking about doing it, I think council should be moving on that to support it.
I'd leave it up to the experts to let us know when they think they need it.
I agree.
Thanks, guys.
The experts tell us what to do. I'm in full support of it. Again, I think we have to get our, Mr. Schultz said, our ducks in a row here as we move forward, because we have to make sure the community understands where we're going and why we're going. So every tool we can potentially put in front of us is helpful, so.
And even though I wasn't on council at the time, 13 through 14, when they ran the original road levy, I can assure you the council, administration, and the residents had 1,000,000 times more information than they had when they ran that in front of the cities.
All right, we ready for a vote? Any other discussion? All right, can you call the roll, please? Or call the vote, please?
Mr. Hamer,
Yes.
Mr. Lowry,
Yes.
Mr. Rupel,
Yes.
Mr. Schulz,
Yes.
Mr. Smolik,
Yes.
Mr. Ziegler,
Yes.
Mr. Fenstermaker,
Yes.
All right, thank you, Doug, Joe, Mayor, Lewis, council, everybody for their hard work on getting to this point. And I'm excited and obviously very hopeful in November.
Yes, thank you, Council President Rupel. Yeah, thanks to all, and thanks to all the residents that came out and shared their opinions and thoughts, and to the not just the ones that showed up here, but that sent emails or addressed any one of us, and whether it was Dollar General or at the rec park, right? All of that input helps us get to where we're at today, and thanks to Mr. Lallo for developing the language too. So, good job, guys.
Thank you. Moving on, resolution number 22-R-37. Second reading, a resolution authorizing the closeout of the contract with Roniak Paving, Inc. for its work on Emerald Glen Court pursuant to the 2020 pavement rehabilitation project, Section 1, and declaring an emergency. Now, do we want to pass this tonight so we can get the money back in the coffers?
Yeah, so that's the idea, right? Lewis said it doesn't have to pass tonight, but if you guys are looking to clear the deck of some legislation that'll ultimately, make sense to pass.
That would be both 37 and 38, correct then?
Correct.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Lewis wanted to check the numbers. Was that right?
Lewis last meeting said he wanted to give it one more go through. He has, and he's good at it.
Let's wait, because that's a good point. Because here's his exact words to me were, council can wait. He didn't say why council could wait or that they need to wait for whatever reason, but yeah, it's not going to matter, so.
All
Good
right,
point.
moving on, resolution number 22-R-38, second reading, a resolution authorizing the closeout of the contract with Roniak.
Same thing on that one, correct, Mayor?
Moving on to new business, public comments on agenda items of new business. Again, an opportunity for the public to come forward with respect to any of the new items proposed for legislation tonight. All right, not seeing any movement. Ordinance number 22-0-39, an ordinance amending section 106.8.01 of the codified ordinances of the city of Kirtland relating to the location, maintenance, and use of the Kirtland Recreation Park and declaring an emergency.
Just before comments on this one, I know, Mr. Lowell, you kind of went through how did this actually come up? What transpired to get these three
Sure.
on the books here
So
tonight?
previously, obviously it's a private drive there, and there were discussions between, I think there's 8 properties that, 8 people that own property on that private drive. A couple years back, we heard from either 1 or 2 of those property owners who didn't want pedestrians to be on the road, didn't want really anything. And prior to that, the city performed some very basic maintenance on that road because it was an emergency access to the park. So, when, like, just again, backstory, what happened was they contacted a lawyer and said, hey, listen, your ordinance says you can't access the park. It's closed. You know, the only access is through the Board of Education. So really, they didn't want anybody walking on that road going to the park. The cross-country team used to run there. They weren't allowed to be on there anymore. So based upon those conversations, you know, we said we agreed because the ordinance said the only entrance and exit is through the Board of Education property. And as a result, really, the city should have no business performing any maintenance on that road. It's a private drive. Even though it's used for private access, but it's not any of our problem. It's the private residents' problems. So that was either 1 or 2 residents came to the city about that, and based upon that, the administration made that decision. We've since been approached by other residents, a number of them, that actually asked for the city to address this issue, to open up that entrance for pedestrians, bicycles, you know, the golf carts, ultra low speed, UAVs, I think it is, or it's in the ordinance. Those types of vehicles to be permitted to enter and exit the park from that spot. And quite frankly, the city has the option. We own that easement, so we can, if we really wanted to, we could open that up for vehicular traffic. Okay. It's up to the city if you want to do that. I didn't, you know, and so the whole purpose of this is to present it to council, kind of clean up the ordinance the way it was clean up the way it was previously and address the ability for people, for residents and kids and the cross-country kids and people who live back on Russellhurst and other areas of Kirtland, just south of that, to be able to use that entrance to get to the park. So it needed cleaning up because of the Park and Rec Commission. And while we're doing that, might as well address some of that issue as well.
Okay, thank you.
I guess that bodes well, given the thought that we still have that culvert project that's been outstanding for 4 or 5 years. And at some point, there's going to need some alternate access because I think that's a full closure, I would imagine, with that deep excavation there. So I just fear that in some point in time, they'll demand rights of a paved job when it was put in privately to skirt certain zoning rules, right? And then people will come back and say, oh, well, we want our road paved. I don't know if that's the best use of public funds when a private road
Yeah,
goes in.
that road will never be in our paving program, right? That's not to say that, to keep it safe for those pedestrians and cyclists to go down there filling in potholes, that kind of thing. It's not to say that that's inappropriate. But that road, because it's a private road, correct me if I'm wrong, we wouldn't include that in our paving program.
Correct. It being a private drive, that is the responsibility of the property owners who live on that road to pave that road.
Thank you for the clarification of that we will not get off your lawn legislation. Ordinance number 22-0-40, an ordinance amending section 1068.02 of the codified ordinances of the city of Kirtland relating to the prohibited conduct in the Kirtland Recreation Park and declaring an emergency. Ordinance number 22,
None of these hurt the Kiwanis because they can be there by permission, correct? So if they're setting up their lemonade stand or anything like that, they just have to go through the channels of permission.
That's exactly right. The park
all good.
operator. You got it.
Anyone else? All right, ordinance number 22-0-41, an ordinance amending section 106.8.03 of the codified ordinances of the city of Kirtland relating to the discharging of firearms, fires, and signs in the Kirtland Recreation Park, declaring an emergency.
Mr. Lallo, this one's strictly just taking out of the 5 lines, taking line D out, and moving E up, basically just eliminating the one line out of there is the enter or leave recreation park except for established entrance, nothing.
That is correct. So the location in this ordinance where it discussed the entrance and exit of the park, it shouldn't be in the section where it regulates discharging firearms, fires, and signs. I put that in the location, maintenance, and use of the park section. So I took that out. And then the only other change was about designating the park operator instead of the Parks and Rec Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Lallo.
A resolution accepting the bid of, was it Karma Use? Is that how you say it? Karma Use? For the pickup and delivery of limestone road materials and declaring an emergency. Again, all 3 of these are supposed to go another additional reading. Resolution number 22-R-43, a resolution accepting the bid of the Shelley Company for the pickup of asphalt concrete road materials and declaring an emergency. Resolution number 22-R-44, a resolution accepting the bid of Barbicus Paving LLC, awarding sections 1 through 2A of the 2022 pavement rehabilitation project and declaring an emergency. Oh, sorry. My almost 50-year-old eyes are failing me. 3A of the 2022 pavement rehabilitation project. My apology. All right, moving on to council comments. Any council comments? Hearing none, continuing concerns. Any continuing concerns from the community? Another opportunity to come forward if you have like to address council. Prior to adjournment, Mr. Lau has asked that we go into executive session to discuss the threat of imminent litigation. So looking for a motion.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Lowry and second by Councilman Smolik.
Yeah. For the resident chat, we'll just be coming back to adjourn. There'll be nothing else left on this, so you don't have to sit